You probably remember last year or so the Tops supermarket shooting in Buffalo, New York that caused Governor Kathy Hochul to do various things, including supposedly ban body armor in the state of New York unless you're a special snowflake employee for the federal government, or the state government for that matter. Well, what's really interesting is during the so-called hush money trial, which is not really accurate, but nevertheless the Donald Trump trial in New York State Supreme Court in Manhattan, guess what happened? According to Stormy Daniels' attorney, who gave an interview with the media, she said that Stormy Daniels has been wearing body armor to protect herself from potential assassination attempts or other crazies that might do harm to her or want to do harm to her. Well, what's weird is I thought that body armor had been already banned in some respect in the state of New York unless you worked for the government, i.e. law enforcement. So what gives here? What does all this mean? And by the way, is such a body armor law even constitutional? Let's break it all down when we come back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and author of many Second Amendment-related books, including Disarm: What the Ukraine War Teaches Americans About the Right to Bear Arms. All right, folks, so we've tracked the Donald Trump quote-unquote hush money trial, which is really just a bookkeeping trial about whether or not certain bookkeeping records were accurate or not. They seem pretty accurate to me, but set that issue aside. You can hear my commentary on Fox News if you tune in there. But for the purposes of this video today, I want to talk about something that's very interesting that just occurred, which is that Stormy Daniels' attorney, that's right, the former porn star that allegedly had an affair with Donald Trump, which Donald Trump denies, apparently, at least according to her attorney who's been giving interviews with the media, has indicated that Stormy Daniels, while she was in New York, has been wearing some form of body armor. Now, this got my attention, not because I think it's a bad idea to wear body armor. I think if Stormy Daniels wants to wear body armor for self-protection, hey, I'm all for that. I think any American citizen should have the right to have body armor to protect themselves if they feel the need. But what's really odd, though, is I recall that after the Tops supermarket shooting in Buffalo, New York, a year or so ago, Governor Kathy Hochul made a super big deal out of enacting laws that said that you could not wear, or you could not buy or acquire or sell body armor in the state of New York unless you fell into a special snowflake category, meaning you work for the government, you were a cop, you work for the federal government, something like that, as defined by the state of New York. But we won't get into the details of all the different people that qualify to wear body armor. The point is there was this law enacted, and I don't recall seeing retired porn star on the list of people that were entitled to wear body armor under the New York State regulations. Maybe it's there. Maybe I missed it. I don't know. But what's interesting, though, is that here you have a situation where Stormy Daniels says she was wearing body armor. And again, let's use this as an opportunity to review New York law when it comes to body armor and then discuss whether or not it makes any sense and whether or not it's constitutional under the Second Amendment. And I'm going to read you some very interesting language out of a Supreme Court case you may be familiar with called the District of Columbia versus Heller. And let's see if that gives us a sign as to whether or not a ban on body armor is constitutional under the Second Amendment. So to begin with, again, Stormy Daniels says that she was scared. This is through her lawyer. She was very scared about giving testimony. She thought someone might, I think the quote is, some nut might do harm to her or something along those lines. I'll put a link to some of the stories down below of what her attorney said. I think it was on CNN about what she was doing. And apparently she said that Stormy Daniels has been wearing a bulletproof vest to go to and from court because she feared for her life or that somebody might shoot her. Apparently, she was worried about security. Now, by the way, I am perfectly fine if someone is concerned for their security and safety that they wear bulletproof vests. But I'm not here talking about my opinion, what I think is appropriate, which is, I think if Ms. Daniels wants to wear a bulletproof vest, that's fine, perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned. But what's interesting is this, that Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, where this trial took place, made a big deal out of saying that these should be banned, and she enacted a law through the legislature that essentially banned the sale and the acquisition and the purchase of these bulletproof vests. Now, whether or not Ms. Daniels acquired a bulletproof vest in New York, or maybe she brought it from another state, who knows? I have no idea. But what's interesting is this seems a little odd that under New York law, you're not supposed to have these anymore, at least kind of as I see the statute, and yet here she is saying that she was wearing it. So it gives rise to what exactly does this law say? Well, to begin with, as a reminder, the statute specifically is designed to prevent ordinary Americans, other than special snowflake law enforcement officers and government employees, from being able to wear body armor as a general matter. Here is a summary of the statute by the state of New York itself. On June 6, 2022, as part of a landmark legislative package to strengthen gun laws and protect New Yorkers in the wake of several mass shootings in the United States, including in Buffalo, New York, Governor Hochul signed into law new restrictions on the purchase, sale, exchange, and transfer of bulletproof vests, then defined as body vest. On July 1, 2022, Governor Hochul signed into law legislation to further strengthen gun laws, which also made technical revisions to the restrictions on body vests and which included body armor in such restrictions. Effective July 6, 2022, when not being engaged or employed in an eligible profession, the purchase, taking possession of, sale, exchange, giving, or disposing of body armor is prohibited. Well, that seems kind of broad, at least according to this summary, which I'll put a link to, by the state of New York. So what exactly does this law ban? Well, it essentially bans the unlawful use of body armor. Let's go to the statute and see what it says. Well, it turns out for the purpose of this law, body armor means any product that is a personal protective body covering intended to protect against gunfire, regardless of whether such product is to be worn alone or is sold as a component or complement to another product or garment. So again, it's a personal protective body covering of some sort. That's what body armor means. Now, it turns out that it is unlawful to purchase body armor in the state of New York, but still, this language of the statute seems a little bit broader to encompass perhaps not just purchasing, but maybe just acquiring. Tell me what you think about the statute. Let's read it next. Under Section 270.21, the unlawful purchase of body armor, it says, a person is guilty of the unlawful purchase of body armor when, not being engaged or employed in an eligible profession, they knowingly purchase or take possession of body armor. Now, this section shall not apply to individuals or entities engaged or employed in eligible professions, which shall include police officers as defined in the section. Now, nothing against Stormy Daniels, but I'm not sure that eligible professions includes retired porn stars. Maybe it does. Maybe she's eligible in some other way that I'm unaware of. Or maybe she brought the body armor with her from another state and they viewed this statute as not applying because she did not buy or sell body armor in the state of New York because she simply brought it in to the state with her. I have no way of knowing. But it is quite interesting, though, that here you have a statute enacted by Kathy Hochul in the legislature that's all about preventing ordinary Americans from having body armor. That's the purpose of it, right? And yet you have Stormy Daniels' attorney admitting, or at least saying on TV, national TV, that her client was wearing body armor in the state of New York. This is apparently the quote according to the reporting from Stormy Daniels' attorney. She wore a bulletproof vest every day until she got to the courthouse. All right, well, seems like she was wearing body armor in the state of New York. Now, is she allowed to do that? I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably okay. First of all, I think that the statute's unconstitutional. So from that level, I'm not sure the statute would be enforceable at one level, but beyond that, maybe she acquired, again, the body armor from out of state and brought it into state, and therefore the purchase, sale, acquisition language of these statutes don't apply to her. But it certainly is an interesting question as a matter of law, and also one wonders whether or not the New York State Attorney General or any of the prosecutors in the state of New York are going to look into this. Now, keep in mind, remember in the Jean Carroll lawsuit alleging that Donald Trump engaged in sexual misconduct toward her that gave rise to, I think, a $90 million judgment in a civil case against Donald Trump by Jean Carroll. If you may recall, we've talked about this before, Jean Carroll testified that she was so scared for what was going on in her life because of Donald Trump that she slept with a handgun. But as it turns out, she admitted, but it turns out she did not have a license for that handgun, so she had an unlicensed handgun in her home in the state of New York. And what did the New York authorities do? Did they go out and arrest her and throw her in jail in the same way they did Dexter Taylor, that gunsmith in Brooklyn, who's now been sentenced to prison for 10 years? No, what they did with Jean Carroll is they went to her home after her testimony and they took the gun and says, once you apply and get your license, we'll give you the gun back. No arrest, no criminal problem whatsoever. So I suspect that to the extent there's any legal argument that Stormy Daniels did something improper here, and I'm not suggesting that she did, but to the extent that the district attorney or some prosecutor in the state of New York wanted to argue that Stormy Daniels did something in violation of the law, I think, again, it would be a stretch, but it certainly doesn't seem to be the sort of thing that they would be looking to do anything with, because, again, it's pretty clear that whatever Stormy Daniels may personally think, it doesn't seem like she comes across as pro-Donald Trump anymore, and since she's probably viewed by the Democratic establishment of the state of New York as anti-Donald Trump, I doubt anything would happen to her, no matter what they thought about the applicability of this law, and her statement, or through her lawyer, that she's been wearing body armor in the state of New York. Now, I should also note that it's illegal to sell body armor in the state of New York. Here's what part of the statute reads. According to Section 270, quote, a person is guilty of the unlawful sale of body armor when they sell, exchange, give, or dispose of body armor, as such term is defined, to an individual whom they know or reasonably should have known is not engaged or employed in an eligible profession. And then it goes on to talk about the unlawful sale of delivery of body armor, which goes on to say, quote, no person, firm, or corporation shall sell or deliver body armor to any individual or entity not engaged or employed in an eligible profession. So there you have it. At one level, one could see certainly arguments about whether or not someone is allowed to acquire and use body armor in the state of New York. But will any of these questions be raised and addressed in the context of Stormy Daniels' testimony and her admission through her attorney that this was going on in the state of New York over the last several weeks? I highly doubt it. Beyond that, I should note that in addition to the fact that I think the law is just absurd and I think Ms. Daniels should be allowed to wear body armor regardless of what the law says, beyond that, I think there's also a very strong constitutional argument that body armor constitutes an arm under the Second Amendment. Remember, the text of the Second Amendment reads that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, you may say to me, is body armor an arm textually in the Second Amendment? And I think we already know the answer to this. Let me read this language from a Supreme Court case called the District of Columbia versus Heller in 2008. And you tell me whether or not you think what I'm about to read you encompasses body armor in the definition of arms, as in the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Supreme Court wrote, quote, we move now from the holder of the right, the people, to the substance of the right to keep and bear arms. Before addressing the verbs keep and bear, we interpret their object, arms. The 18th century meaning is no different from the meaning today. The 1773 edition of Samuel Johnson's dictionary defined arms as weapons of offense or armor of defense. Or armor of defense. The Supreme Court goes on, citing to Timothy Cunningham's important 1771 legal dictionary by saying this follows. Timothy Cunningham's important 1771 legal dictionary defined arms as anything that a man wears, hear what I just said, wears for his defense. Wears for his defense, sounds like body armor to me. Anything that a man wears for his defense or takes into his hands or useth in wrath to cast at or strike another. Timothy Cunningham's important legal dictionary from the late 1800s at the time of America's founding. So it seems to me, if you look at the Supreme Court's decision of Heller and the founding era dictionaries they cited to define the meaning of the word arms in the text of the Second Amendment, it certainly sounds like body armor falls squarely within the definition of arms, as in the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And we know that the definition of infringement, if you use the same dictionaries that the founders used and the Supreme Court used in Heller, you go to these dictionaries of Samuel Johnson, Noah Webster, and the like, the same dictionaries the Supreme Court used in Heller at the time of the founding, guess what? They define, right, shall not be infringed. They define the word to infringe as meaning to destroy or to hinder, to destroy or to hinder. Certainly a restriction on the ability to acquire, to use, or a ban on the use of body armor seems clearly to be a infringement, a hindrance, and thus the right of the people to keep and bear and to wear body armor shall not be infringed. It certainly seems like this New York law infringes the right of the people to wear body armor, which means textually it violates the Second Amendment. And as you know, under the Heller-Brun methodology, once the text is implicated, the burden shifts to the government to show some sort of a long-standing, unbroken set of laws going back to the founding of 1791 when the Second Amendment was adopted. This shows there's a long-standing tradition of regulation of body armor or restrictions on body armor, and I'm pretty sure that such a thing simply does not exist. And we never saw anything like this until maybe somewhere in the 20th century. But I'm not even sure any of that's true until the 21st century when anti-gun nuts like Kathy Hochul decide that banning body armor is somehow a good idea. But Kathy Hochul's, an insane anti-gunner. That's why she says she wants to bring us back to muskets. By the way, muskets are pretty deadly too, but that's a story for another day. All right, folks. Well, hope you learned something here today. Again, I'm not suggesting that Stormy Daniels has broken any laws or done anything criminal or done anything wrong. In my view, she should be entitled to wear body armor if she sees fit. As to whether or not some district attorney or some prosecutor is going to take a run at her under these new laws involving body armor, I highly doubt it. Nevertheless, it is an interesting observation that at the same time where Kathy Hochul is trying to ban these body armor vests and so on, Stormy Daniels is using them supposedly, at least according to statements made by her attorney to the press. So there you have it, folks. Don't forget to follow me on X at 4boxesdiner, and don't forget to subscribe and resubscribe. We're trying to get to 150,000 subscribers here on YouTube, and we will see you again soon here at the 4 Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.